Hi everyone and welcome to Traveling Misknits. My name is Pia and I am so happy that you're joining me here in Texas today for a little chat about yarn and knitting. So Happy New Year! I can't believe it's been a week already. I really hope 2024 has been kind to you so far. It's been quite a while since I recorded a podcast. I have been doing Vlogmas all throughout December, but I do know that there are some of you who do not appreciate the format of Vlogmas, so I'm just gonna very shortly go through the projects that I worked on in December before showing you what I have finished since New Year and what I am currently working on. I did have two main December projects that was worked with two of my advent calendars. The first one was, of course, my advent sweater, the Hyacinth. I do not have it with me, but if you want to see the finished Hyacinth and hear a little bit about how I made it, what choices I made, and how I arrived at a sweater that I love, I suggest you go back and watch Vlogmas Day 20 because that is the day that I finished the sweater. My second Advent project was a granny stripe blanket, which I also don't have with me. Both projects are back in Denmark. They are rather large, so I didn't want to travel with them. But I was able to finish my granny stripe advent blanket. I did make some changes to my original thoughts about the blanket. Again, if you're interested in seeing the blanket, hearing how I made it, I do make my granny stripe blankets just a little bit different to get better drape and to allow for the use of many different yarns. If you're interested in that, I recommend that you watch Vlogmas Day 23. That is the day that I finished the blanket and cast on another one. And I go through in detail how I make these granny stripe blankets. I also finished a couple of other things during December. The first one is my perfect little cardigan that I was knitting on in the month of November. It's the one thing that I wasn't able to finish until December 1st. But I finished it in the beginning of December and I am loving it. It is so perfect. There is one thing that I need to go back and fix. I did bind off with the beautiful, beautiful bind off from Ankestrick. You can find it. It does, as you can see, it actually looks much like a sewn or Italian or tubular bind off. It is so much easier to work. And you can find instructions here on YouTube. If you do search for Ankestrick, then you will get her channel and you can find this genius bind off. The thing with this bind off is there's not a lot of stretch to it. I have since learned that if I go up several needle sizes, like 3, 4, maybe even 5 needle sizes, then I will get the stretch that I need. But this is just not enough stretch for a sleeve. So I need to go back and pick out this bind off, rework it on a much larger needle, and then it will be perfect. But yeah, it is a perfect cardigan. It has such a good fit, probably because of the compound raglan, where you start by only working the increases on the body, then you work a regular raglan, and then at the end, on some sizes, you do some additional increasing only for the sleeves, so that you get it's actually a little bit like a saddle shoulder. It looks a little bit like a saddle shoulder, only I think this one is neater and much easier to work. It does have this ribbed detail going all the way from the neckline ribbing all the way down the sleeves and into the sleeve ribbing here. And that's the only thing that goes on this cardigan. It is very classic, simple, easy to wear, super easy to wear, really. I haven't put in buttons. On my first one, I did put in buttons, but I didn't do buttonholes because in my experience, they don't always end up looking so, they often get too big when I make buttonholes. So what I did for the first one was I sewed on the buttons, then I sewed the cardigan, then I pulled the buttons halfway through where I thought they should be, let it dry that way, and that stretched out the stitch sufficiently that I can easily button and unbutton my cardigan. You can also, with your hands, just widen one stitch and even sew around it if you want to make proper buttonholes and not just push them through wherever. But yeah, I am very happy with this. Of course, I have used it a lot because it's just this staple in your wardrobe that you can use with almost anything. The yarn is also a lovely yarn. It's called Alpwolle and I got it from Garnspecialisten. But since they specialize in leftover yarns, you can't always come back and get the same yarn again. If you want to hear more about the cardigan, the yarns that I used, I suggest you go back to my latest episode in November, where I am pretty sure that I talk about this project at length. I am, of course, gonna link both the episodes that I mention and the patterns that I talk about in the description box just below this video. I also did a little bit of gift knitting. I'm not big on gift knitting, but I will knit for knit-worthy people who have a specific wish so that I know that what I'm making is actually going to make them happy. So the first thing I did is I made a hat for Peter. And this took a couple of tries. My first thought was to make it really large and then felt it so that it would be thick and almost windproof and really warm. I knitted it and I felted it. It's a little tight on me, but I can use it and that's fine. I needed an extra hat. But then I knit another one for him without felting it because apparently it's really difficult for me to control the felting. I remember when I always felted things just by hand washing. I would have a bucket of very hot water and a bucket of icy cold water. I would use lots of soap and then just really work it into the item that I wanted felted, and I would take it directly from the hot water to the cold and hot and cold and lots of soap and movement and like squishing it. That will make it felt and you can control it better when you're doing it by hand, but it's a lot of work. It's so much easier just to throw it in the washer and yeah. But of course that doesn't always work out like you want it to. I used my own patterns, the Knitting School's hat. It's a free pattern that I have available. I love that pattern because you just knit a long tube, do some quick decreases for the crown, and then you fold it in a, am I allowed to say it's a very clever way? When you fold it, you end up with all stockinette stitch showing, 3 layers over your ears and 1 layer over your head. So no turning your work as you're knitting, and no worrying about the turn showing up. On the inside of the brim, all you see is stockinette all the way up to here. Can you even tell, since it's a black hat? There is no need to worry about the wrong side showing when you're folding it like this. So he was happy with his hat. It was a little bit small. So on Christmas Day, I think, I redid the crown, just worked a couple of centimeters extra, and now it is perfect for him. The only other gift that I made is this friend-to-friend shrug that I made for my daughter-in-law, Maria, who really likes how she commented last time we were here, how she loved that I would just put a shrug, a Saturday shrug, was it, over my jean jacket or my leather jacket or my blazers when we were going out, just to give a little extra warmth and also some interest to the outfit. So I thought I would take advantage of the fact that I was actually in a place where Hue and Me is a really easily accessible yarn. You can get this so easily. So I got some Hue and Me and some different colors. I made this one for Maria, and then I made this one for myself. Let me just see if I can do something here. As you can see, this one is again made large enough that I can comfortably wear it over a jacket. But I have actually found that I love to use it over just a shirt or a long sleeve t-shirt. So I just ordered some more Hue and Me so that I can make one that is slightly smaller so that it fits better just for indoor use. They are so fast to make. For this one, I used 2 bowls of Hue and Me and 7 hours of knitting. And then I had my shrug, and I am really enjoying it. I cannot recommend this pattern enough. It is by Leslie Friend. It's called the Friend-to-Friend Shrug. It is such an easy pattern. It is easy to modify. It's very well written. You always know exactly what to do, and it is so simple. I did make a few modifications just because of personal preferences. This one I knit in one of the sizes given in the pattern. But this one, I thought, I'm between sizes if I wanted to be used over a jacket. So I just cast on a few extra stitches, and because it's so simple, it's probably the easiest modification that you can ever make. Apart from just knitting something longer, but still very easy. I also modified it to have a 1x1 ribbing here, where the pattern calls for a 2x2 ribbing. It's just personal preference. I tend to like 1x1 ribbing better. When you do work a 1x1 ribbing, you sometimes have to fiddle a little to make it. You see here, let me explain. On the sides, you have this 1 purl stitch going up, and of course you want that purl stitch to also be a purl stitch in your ribbing. If you are casting on a number of stitches that can be divided by 4, you're good to go. It will all just fit. If you cast on a number of stitches that cannot be divided by 4, you have to fiddle a little, and I had to do that for Marilla's here. So what I did is on one side of the shrug, I decreased a stitch, and on the other side, I increased a stitch. And then I was able to still have the purl stitches on the sides coming up all the way from the ribbing. The other modification that I made is to the neckline. The pattern calls for a 2x2 ribbing at the neckline to match the 2x2 ribbing at the body. But I wanted a simpler look, cleaner look, if you will. At the same time, I did not want the neckline to curl as stockinette stitch will if left to its own devices. What I did to get this neckline that I am really happy with is on the very last round, I would take the second purl bump. I would, from the back side, obviously, of the stockinette, I would take the second purl bump and lift it up on my left needle and knit it together with the stitch itself. And I'll try to show you what I mean here. I have some simple stockinette stitch knit in the round, just like this one. Then I would go from the back side, not into the first purl bump, which would be this one, but the second. That second purl bump I would grab with my needle and place it up on the left needle, so that I had 2 stitches here. And then I would knit these 2 stitches together as one. If you do that all the way around, it will create, you can see it, it's like a squished down stitch that doesn't curl. The next thing I did is I turned my work and then I bound off using Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, worked from the wrong side, because that gives it almost looks like an I-cord bind off. And together with this do not curl trick, I really think it gives a very, very nice neckline. I did the same on my own, but it's so difficult to see because mine is black. I also discovered something else as I was knitting these rugs, because, and this one is the first one that I knit. Can you see how my SSKs are not as neat as you would want them to be? They're not perfect. I am gonna block this, and before I block it, I'm gonna pull a little bit on the stitches from the wrong side, just to make them lay flatter, lay nicer. But what I found out was, every time you either knit or slip a stitch, you're gonna pull on it. Sometimes you're gonna pull a lot, sometimes you're just gonna pull a little. It's not really a problem, because usually you will then go on to either you will then go on to work the next stitch, and that will tighten up the stitch before. But when you do the SSK, you slip 2, which means that the second stitch that you slip, that's going to be tightened up when you continue to knit. But the first stitch that you slipped is never going to get pulled back into shape. That's one of the main problems with my SSK not being neat in a bulky yarn. I mean, when I work in a thin and even rustic yarn like this, my SSK, they're beautiful. You can't even see that they're there. But in a bulky yarn like this, you can see them. So I did solve the problem, but I am not sure that you're going to be able to tell on this one. Can you tell that they are much smoother here? I think you can. What I did was, first of all, I was being extremely careful when I was slipping the stitches, like just barely sliding them onto the tip of my right needle. But I also found out that if I slip the first stitch purlwise and the second stitch knitwise, it will actually have a tendency to be neater, at least for me. This could very well be completely different from you. Usually you will slip the 2 stitches knitwise and then knit them together, slip, slip, knit. But if you slip 1 purlwise and 1 knitwise and then knit them together, I think they are looking a little more neat and tight. The third thing that I do is when I finish, I will go over the slip, slip knits and just tighten that first stitch ever so slightly by pulling on the stitch before that, just pulling a little bit on it. And then after blocking, it's nice, it's neat, I love it. Yep. That was a lot of talk about the friend-to-friend shrug, but this is just, other than being a perfect gift knit, because again, 2 balls of yarn, 7 hours of knitting, then gift knitting is okay. Then gift knitting is loads of fun. But also they're so versatile, and I think maybe they're a little easier to wear than the weekend shrugs, because the weekend shrugs are just these tubes of ribbing, which are absolutely glamorous and beautiful. But this one, just because there's shoulder shaping in it, it just sits. You don't have to fuss with it. You don't have to worry. It will just sit where you place it and stay there all day long. So, friend-to-friend shrug, I cannot recommend it enough. If you, by any chance, have not been watching Leslie's podcast, I am going to link that as well. It is wonderful. You should definitely go watch. She's full of inspiration, full of ideas. She's absolutely fabulous. If you have been following this podcast for a while, you've probably heard me talk about my Christmas Day cast on. It's a thing that I have done for every Christmas for many, many, many years. During December, I will always prepare a special project, something that I'm really itching to knit. I will get the yarn, the needles, the pattern. I will pack everything up in a nice project bag and keep it, not touch it until Christmas morning. In Denmark, we celebrate Christmas on December 24. In the evening, the family will gather, like the extended family. We will share a meal. We will dance around the Christmas tree, exchange presents, all of the good stuff. And then the next morning, the house is quiet. And we can just, go down into the living room, often carrying either our duvet or some blankets, stay in PJs all day. Of course, PJs are mandatory on Christmas Day. And just sit there, relax, enjoy all the memories of a wonderful evening. It's a very quiet day for us. We only have leftovers. No one wants to be bothered with cooking. So we just heat up some leftovers and watch a wonderful movie. This year we did go through all three Hobbit movies, which was I felt kind of accomplished for doing that. But yeah, it is a day where we just relax completely into Christmas. And I, of course, bring my Christmas Day cast on. This year it was in a beautiful project bag from Knitwear by Maki. She sells her bags on Instagram. She does ship internationally, and I love her bags. They're always pretty and they're really practical. They have this square bottom so they can stand on their own, and yeah, I like that they're zippered so that everything stays in there. I packed a beautiful yarn. Let me just see. Of course I don't have a full bowl of it, but this is a rustic yarn, untreated wool in a sport weight. And I will say it's not superwash soft, but for a rustic wool it is quite soft. I have no problem wearing this next to skin. It is a Portuguese yarn, so I have of course asked my Brazilian daughter-in-law how to pronounce this. She has been trying to teach me. She's had some good laughs. I'm gonna try. If it sounds too terrible, I will mute myself and add her voice as a voiceover. It is Rosarios Quattro Romaria. Let me see if I see. That was so terrible the camera doesn't even want to focus on it. Anyway, this is a yarn that I got from a Danish hand dyer by Kilarek, who is also selling a few commercial yarns. And this has quickly become my new favorite workhorse yarn. It is a very budget-friendly yarn. Like very. It is, as I said, a sport weight, which means that you can basically work it up as a DK because it will fluff up with blocking, or you can knit it down as a fingering weight to get a really tight knit sweater. Yeah, it's just beautiful. And they don't specify the fibers. It just says 100% wool. So they don't specify which fiber blend this is, but new favorite. Other favorite workhorse yarns for me is Wool of the Andes. It is the Drops Lima. Those kinds of yarns that will just always come through for you. And you can mix them with everything, and they're sturdy, they will hold up nicely, and they're budget friendly so that you don't knit yourself out of your own home. So yeah, favorite new yarn, favorite needles I also put in. These are my Chaogu bamboo needles, which are my absolute favorites to work with. I am kind of a loose knitter, so working on a bamboo needle tightens everything up just slightly. Maybe you can see here, I am often, when I'm working in the round, I will have a smaller needle in my left hand, the hand that feeds the stitches, and then I will have the required yarn to get required needle to get gauge in my right hand, where I actually create the stitches. It just makes it easier. The stitches flow easier when the left hand needle is a little bit smaller. And then let us look at my Christmas Day cast on, because I am in love. This is a sweater that I have been thinking about for so long. A very simple, classic sweater with ribbed arms, because they just fit. I mean, anything in ribbing will just fit nicely, tightly, for sure. I did for this one use a compound raglan, just like on my perfect little cardigan, to get this really perfect fit, where you have, again, almost a saddle shoulder and then a regular raglan going down. And yeah, of course, since the sleeves are ribbed, they're fitted. These are fitted sleeves. The body is not at all fitted. It is not hugely oversized. I was thinking about making the body hugely oversized, but as I was trying it on, I could tell that it shouldn't be hugely oversized. It should just be comfortably oversized. And yeah, very, very, very simple, and thus probably one of those wardrobe staples that I will reach for again and again. Some of the knits that I wear the most are the very simple ones, like my family sweater, my Aurora. These very, very simple knits that you don't have to think about anything. You can just throw them on. And you can also dress them up. Beautiful shirt underneath, or a scarf, a row of pearls. You can do so much with these simple sweaters, and I do a lot with them. I do use them for going out and staying in and cozying up and whatnot. And as you can see, I am not that far from finishing my Christmas Day cast on. Not at all far. I don't have a ton of knitting time these days, but I'm sure that's gonna come soon. More about that later when we talk about what goes on outside of my project bag. But yeah, I am plucking away at the sleeve. I'm a little surprised that it doesn't bother me to work all of this twisted ribbing, or it's not twisted ribbing, it is ribbing with twisted knit stitches. I do not twist the purl stitches. I see no reason why. You're never gonna watch it from the inside. Again, I have used Anke Strick's bind off. I really like the look of this. And this time I went up. The sleeve is knit on a 3.75 millimeter, which is a 4 maybe US. See, I'm wearing glasses. I can actually tell you. Let's look at this one. It is a 5. So the sleeve itself is knit on a needle size 5 or 3.75 millimeters. But when I bound this off, I went up on a 5 millimeter, which is a 8 or 9. 8. Yeah, I'm going with 8. So quite a few needle sizes. And that, of course, means that the ribbing doesn't look so neat now. I'm sure it will once it's blocked, but it is stretchy enough to be very, very comfortable. Just look how pretty it is. It is so pretty. So yeah, I am really enjoying working on this one. What I have done is I have tried my sleeves on constantly. Can you tell that there are light bulb stitch markers hanging from it? I have been trying the sleeves on constantly and making the decreases right where I thought they should be. And then I have put light bulb stitch markers in there so that it's easy to replicate on the second sleeve. When I do that, I know that some people will just take the light bulb stitch markers from one sleeve or one sock and move them over to the other. I always keep one extra stitch marker so that the first one here is a new stitch marker, and I have all my stitch markers on the first sleeve, because for me it's nice to see how far should I approximately knit before I start measuring the sleeves up against each other. If I take the first stitch marker out, I can't remember if I'm supposed to knit ½ inch or 5 inches before decreasing again. So I leave one, which means that right now I am knitting what corresponds to this piece on sleeve number 2. So once I reach the next set of decreases, I take this stitch marker to mark those, so that I again can see how far do I have to knit between these two. Am I even making sense? It does make sense when you do it. So yeah, that's where I am. I have been knitting on it quite a lot. It was my airplane knitting when we went over here. Thing is, usually when we do these long haul flights, I will be happily knitting away almost from takeoff to touchdown. I will just knit, 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 and just enjoy that nobody is there to say, shouldn't you go out for a walk? Don't you think you should move around a little? Nobody's bothering me. I just get to sit and knit. But this time, I was so tired. I was so tired. I slept almost all the way over here, which meant that I was arriving all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But of course, I didn't do a lot of knitting, which does come second. It was nice to be well rested when I arrived here. As soon as I arrived, I did cast on a new project. The last time I was here, I made a sweater for my little John. This one, it is the family sweater, just with a few modifications. And then he asked that I embroidered a J, and he even painted or drew the J for me. It should look like this, Grandma. And I promised their mom that I would also make one for Lucas. So as soon as I arrived, I cast on for Lucas's sweater, and that was the one I was using to demonstrate how I bound out of this rug. And I knit the body. I am almost ready to do the ribbing now. And then I ran out of yarn. And I was sure I had another ball. In my mind, there were 2 balls. But there wasn't. So I need to go out and get a second ball of this. I am knitting it in some yarn his mom bought. It was Yarn Bee Soft and Sleek in the olive colorway. And I need to go to Hobby Lobby and get another ball of this yarn. And of course, it's not going to be the same dye lot. I mean, the chances of that are minimal. And I can't even check it because I don't have the ball band. On the body, I think I'm just going to start the ribbing and then make it maybe a little longer than usual, just to make sure that the body is long enough. But it's fine. He's 2. It's going to be fine. If there's a slight difference between dye lots, it doesn't show so much if you change into the ribbing right away. Of course, in the sleeves, I'm going to have a problem. If I just start knitting with another dye lot, it's going to be obvious. So what I think I'm going to do is put in some stripes, just like I have in the ribbing. Just put in maybe 1 stripe on one sleeve and 2 on the other. That way, you're probably not going to tell that it's a different yarn. You're not. I'm hoping. For these sweaters, I am using the pattern for my family sweater, which is a very simple raglan pullover that I have made from, I think, size 3 months up to very large, very long man. So everyone in the family should be able to find a size that fits them. I've been making loads of modifications because that's what I do. I can't even remember when was the last time I knit something to pattern. The biggest modification is that the yarn that I'm using is a heavier yarn than what the pattern calls for. The pattern calls for a DK to worsted weight. This is heavier. I was not able to, well, I could have met gauge, but then this would have been more of a jacket than a sweater. So I just figured out which size do I want to make for them, how long is that size around the chest, how many stitches does it call for, how many stitches do I have on 10 centimeters, and then I could see that I should go down 2 sizes to get a fit that I want. I am also omitting the Estonian braids that the original family sweater has on the yoke, simply because every time I make those Estonian braids, they drive me bonkers. They're not fitly to work, they just take forever. I remember when I made Peter's, he's a big, tall guy. Just one round of Estonian braid took me an hour and a half, 2 hours. It was horrible. I've made so many family sweaters, so I thought this time I am letting go of the Estonian braids. Also, I think that with the stripes up here in the ribbing, that's enough interest. I don't think I need the Estonian braids. Although it would be fun to make those in a contrasting color. Note to self. Yeah. Other than that, I'm not making modifications, but I mean, that is also deconstructing the entire pattern. Yeah, I am looking forward to finding the time to go and pick up some more yarn so that I can finish this for little Lucas. It is kind of cold over here, like kind of, but cold-ish, and definitely cold enough that the kids would be able to wear their sweaters. John calls his hug from grandma. I'm wearing my hug from grandma, which is just adorable. So yeah, I'm excited to finish this. I can finish this in just a couple of hours. Sleeves on such a small sweater take no time. So as soon as I get the yarn, I will finish that so that he can wear it. Of course, I have all sorts of dreams about projects that I want to start, things that I want to knit, but when it comes down to it, what I really want to do is crochet a blanket. I don't know, this December of just crocheting granny stripes, it just made me realize how relaxing it is to have something that is just soothing and calming, centering, something that you can always just pick up and work on for however long or short time you have, and just feel, for me, it's a way of taking me back to myself, just centering for a little while. So that's really what I want to do. That's probably gonna happen. I can pretend that I'm not gonna go out and buy yarn and hooks, but we kind of all know that it is going to happen, right? I am really enjoying, I did make this decision in December that I want to slow my roll when it comes to my making. I want to be more mindful of making the things that makes me happy, rather than pushing. I want to create. I want to do something new, something exciting, something. I want to use my brain in my knitting. I want to use my creativity. Sometimes I just want to make something, again, soothing, calming. And I'm going to make time for that this year. I am going to be very mindful not to... The thing is, when the mind is so full of ideas, it really does take quite a lot of self-discipline not just to throw yourself into it. And of course, I'm not going to be disciplining myself. If I want to throw myself into it, I can just go have at it. But I will try to remind myself how joyful it was to be just working on something very, very simple. I feel like I have been talking forever, which I probably also have. Usually at this point, I would just talk a little bit about what has been going on outside of my project bags. I do have a life outside of knitting, believe it or not. But yeah, nothing much really. On December 30th, we left Denmark to come over here to Texas, celebrate New Year's Eve, and then to help our son and daughter-in-law move house, and also prepare a new Jiu-Jitsu academy. My son originally came over here to open a Jiu-Jitsu school. He came in early 2020. He signed the lease for a huge space just a couple of days before COVID broke loose. So he had somewhat of a rough start. But now he's ready to open Academy number 2. They're opening today. They're telling me that there has been quite a lot of work and this whole situation. I wouldn't know. I've been staying here at home with the little ones, my Lucas and John. We've been having a lot of fun, but it is a very quiet life when you have 2 little ones. Yeah, it's wonderful. I am really enjoying myself here. So I don't have a lot of fun stuff to share because it is just the wonders of every day. It is how even the smallest thing is a miracle to a 4-year-old. And I love seeing the world through those eyes. I love that children are so willing to see the miracles. I am going to let you go now. Thank you. If you have held on to the end, thank you so much. I hope that you will have a wonderful week. I hope to see you again next week. Until I see you again, stay safe, stay happy, and keep knitting.